the very soul of the Trump administration is ongoing as we speak. If you thought the swamp, the deep state, or the sewer, as our friend Congressman Tim Burchett rather us call it, was just going to roll over and give up easily, well, you would be sorely mistaken. Our friend Laura Loomer is reporting, quote, that there is an active op taking place, and it involves Chinese spy Alex Wong and Senator Tom Cotton. Alex Wong is, of course, that NSC staffer second to Michael Waltz. Senator Tom Cotton, she says, has been plotting to take Pete Hegseth's job. That's the defense secretary. She says Senator Cotton has been gunning for a role in the Trump administration for a long time. And his buddy, Alex Wong, is not only Michael Waltz's deputy national security advisor, but he also served, as the foreign policy advisor for Tom Cotton from 2015 to 2017. In fact, it was Tom Cotton who actually referred Wong to Waltz. Senator Cotton knows he's getting primaries, so he wants to be the DOD secretary after being passed over for the job. Now, you might recall, as Laura's saying, he was initially rumored to be a top contender to be CIA director or actually DOD secretary. I can confirm that what Laura Loomer is saying is exactly true, because that's exactly what my sources have been telling me as well. Now, you have to understand that all of this is happening in the shadow of major personnel shifts, not only inside the national security apparatus of the Trump administration. Pro-MAGA officials like Peter Marocco at State Department have been unceremoniously let go, fired by Biden-era holdovers and deep state haters of Donald Trump. Where is Marco Rubio in all of this? Well, I'm told he's not directly at fault, but his flaw is that he's running the State Department as you would an office in Congress. And in fact, the aides that he brought over, that's all they know. So they've essentially turned it over to Biden subversives, which is why we're seeing some of what we saw in Romania this week, which we'll hopefully discuss later in the show. Over at the Pentagon, however, former U.S. Marine and Iraq War veteran Dan Caldwell was literally perp-walked out of the building, as were other top defense officials such as Darren Selnick, a former captain in the U.S. Air Force who was the deputy chief of staff for Hegseth, as well as former Marine Colin Carroll. All of these men are close, trusted aides of Secretary Hegseth. In other words, Hegseth is now being isolated, which is why now also Bill Kristol, Dan Quayle's so-called brain, is tweeting things like this, quote, prediction Hegseth gone by Friday. Don't know regarding replacement. Aha! Cotton? My friends, this is the swamp striking back. All because of a handful of Trump defense advisors who are skeptical about striking Iran. And as it turns out, Trump himself is not sanguine about striking Iran either. What you are witnessing is yet another slow-rolling administrative coup against actual MAGA supporters in the senior-most parts of the administration. It's not just the State Department. It's not just the Pentagon. Joining us now is Steve Abramowitz at the Heartland Journal. Steve, look, I'm talking about the State Department and Pentagon here because this is what I've been focused on this week. Particularly, I've had so many calls and discussions I can't tell you from staffers inside the building, foreign policy, people who would typically be in the administration outside the building, still talk to people, and clearly there is an attempted coup going on, all of what we saw in 2017. I have also been critical, though not as focused this week, on the DOJ and FBI. In fact, I keep a running count of Bondi's, Attorney General Pam Bondi's Fox News appearances, but I feel like anytime I turn on the TV, she's there. And today I, tweeted, day 78 of Pam Bondi's tenure as AG. Not a very strong record, but like 78 Fox News appearances. You've also been keeping track of this, Steve. What's your grade thus far?
C- maybe. I mean, you made the great point, but I think you have to go back about two decades or more to actually get to the bottom of this, because what this is business as usual for bureaucrats. where laws or regulatory authority are implemented by civil servants, not elected officials. That's what we've become. Full disclosure, I love Dan Bongino. I found his podcast during COVID when I got banned from the gym for not wearing my mask. And so did a lot of street walking with him in my headphones. Ryan Cole, Tracy Beans, who's just on my show the other day, another Dan Horowitz. They got me through when everyone else got fat watching Netflix. So I found him out about episode 150, went back, heard all 149, and every day since up to the last 2000. That's a lot of time to spend with someone, and you think you get to know them, right? I know it's television, camera, persona, not the real person. I don't know his soul, but he gave us things like the Bongino rule. Wait 24 to 48 hours. Better to be right than first. Remember the names. QT time is over. That meme out there of him. More. Follow the money. Exonerate. Spygate. Those are the names of his books. I bought them. They're right here. All three. I literally made my podcast based on these informed information that he was giving us. And, look who's on the cover. We got Schiff, Brennan, Comey, Biden, exonerated. You can add Clapper and Mueller, which means a guy named, Weissman, Elias, and Eisman, the lawfare kings. Friend of the show, Jason Goodman at Crowdsource The Truth, is all over that. But Dan tweeted not 6 months ago before taking the job, institutions and organizations smart people don't trust anymore. The media, the FBI, the DOJ, the IRS, COVID scientists, medical associations, scientists associations and journals, bond rating agencies, environmental scientists, woke corporate America, teachers unions. Feel free to add to this growing list. That was on September 18th, 2024, before he got this new job. And that got 550,000 views. But why aren't Gates and Fauci getting lawyers? I wrote about, Deborah Burke's admission of guilt in her own book years ago. Myself, I wrote this column. No file opened I know of for admitting she misled the president for COVID. So what I'm saying is I'm being patient. I'm trusting the plan. I'm waiting for this guy who I got to know a little bit on air deliver the goods, but Kash Patel, Pam Bondi aren't doing it. And my biggest fear is she's auditioning for your job. She's doing what Kellyanne McEnany did. She's going to go get a big fat check after the 4 years are over, after doing not much like Trey Gowdy did, and end up at Fox News as a contributor. And nothing much will have changed. I hope not. I really want these people to do it. But, she took Matt Gates's place. He had a show called Firebrand. He was supposed to be there. He was jilted. He got the deep state after him. They went after his father for big bucks. They didn't have him. They spiked him. She comes in and she kind of dissed us on the whole Epstein files with the influencers getting empty folders. I'm waiting. I'm patiently, but I'm running out of patience. Thanks for letting me rant.
When somebody says trust the plan, Steve, I almost shake.
I'm getting PTSD. Yeah.
Because I was around for the first term when everybody said, "Oh, Barr's a new sheriff in town," and indictments are coming, and I will tell you, it's eerily similar to what I'm hearing now, which is I hope I'm wrong, because we need accountability. I sincerely hope I'm wrong, as I sincerely had hoped that I was wrong then. I could tell you there's usually some murmurings, right? Even when there's investigations, you can't keep anything really truly quiet in Washington, D.C. You would hear, there's some movement on this. There's some investigation. You would hear something, and I wasn't hearing anything then related to what, Sean Hannity was putting on his show every night. And I fear I'm hearing nothing now as well. Now, I would hope that maybe they're just better at keeping it quiet, but I'm afraid that's not the case. And I can tell you, Steve, you brought up Kayleigh McEnany, and that's a great example. And I like her. I liked her, but I do feel like she sold out quite a bit. I was around her a lot during that time. Here's what Fox does. The moment you get a position like this, they make it very clear, even down to the director of broadcast media, some name you don't know at the White House. They make it very clear. You play ball with us. You come on, you do this, you're going to get a big fat contract at the end of this. And Barr's spokeswoman, Kelly Kupak, who's now married to one of the biggest book agents or whatever, publicists in DC, which is also, some of those people who got these massive book deals that were questionable. she got a job at Fox as the news editor in DC. So you're exactly spot on when you're concerned about that.
Well, look at George Stephanopoulos, $18 million per year. He got a new 4-year contract for 65. Jen Psaki, 10 million. Nobody even watches that. This used to be what press secretaries did, right? I mean, Stephanopoulos was in the war room and whatever, but most of them, that's what would happen. Now we're seeing lawyers like Kellyanne McEnany ending up that were press secretaries, but these are the Clappers and the Comeys of the world who end up with law degrees, but then they get gigs on CNN. And so you were talking about top advisors at the Pentagon being walked out of there, like Caldwell, Dan Caldwell, whatever.
Yeah.
In the old days, we used to have Aldrich Ames, right? He was convicted of spying for Soviet Russia. That was life sentence without parole. Then we had David Boone, who sold $60,000 worth of stuff to the KGB, 24 years and 4 months. These people are just being fired, really, or shuffled around. And here's where I get upset. Kash Patel promoted 3 very, very deep statey dudes that one was very harsh on the J6ers. Another one was denying religious exemptions for COVID vaccines for employees like Kyle Seraphin, who ended up quitting. And then another one, they just did this. So Stanley Metters, Spencer Evans, and Steve Jensen. I forget what the other one did. It was something that would, if I had my notes in front of me, I would be smarter at it. But long story short is that's not firing. That's not arresting. That's not getting a grand jury together. And that's promoting within what's that all about? That is not what Dan Bongino said for years, that he was all about transparency, getting to the bottom. And
that's how I feel. And look, I'm getting a lot of trust the plan messages from people on our side who either worked in the bureaucracy, or no Dan, no Kash. I get it, but I've got to see something, Steve. And as far as those Fox News gigs, I was joking with a Trump senior official yesterday who was, gave me a call about some things. And they're like, oh, what, you should have been press secretary. I'm like, that's a very hard, terrible job. And they're like, oh, but then you get a Fox News show. And I said, no, I wouldn't, because I would just make everybody mad. And I was still not going to show. Steve, so good to see you. People should go watch your show. You can see it at heartlandjournal.com, heartlandjournal.com. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Have you ever wondered what happened to the legendary Chuck Norris? Well, I recently saw a video he made and I was shocked. That guy's amazing and he's staying active well into his 80s. What's even more shocking is he's stronger, can work out longer, and even has plenty of energy left over for his grandkids. He did this by just making one change. He says he still feels like he's in his 50s. His wife even started doing this one thing too, and she's never felt better. She says she feels 10 years younger, her body looks leaner, and she has energy all day. Chuck made a very special video that explains everything. Make sure you watch it by going to chuckdefense.com/Lindell. It will change the way you think about your health. Once again, that's chuckdefense.com/Lindell. You won't believe how simple it is.
And speaking of major moves that are happening in the diplomatic world as we come close to the close of Donald Trump's first 100 days in office, which we have been covering inside and out for you, his special envoy is meeting with leaders in Paris along with Secretary of State Marco Rubio to discuss the prospects of peace in Europe. But there's more to it than just settling the Ukraine war with Russia, as Trump wages a massive trade war, which was the topic of conversation between he and Meloni, notably against China. He is forcing the world to completely rearrange the economic and trade order to make it more favorable to the United States. Now, part of that plan is to try to peel away Russia's and the relationship between Russia and China. And here's what geopolitical analyst Gregory Copley had to say on our show yesterday about this very prospect.
It's nothing which the Russians have their heart in. And frankly, President Trump is doing with Moscow today what Richard Nixon did with Beijing in 1972, pulling these two Eurasian powers apart and dealing with them separately. And China is basically destroying itself as now helped by the US trade deals and the like. So essentially we'll be left with Russia standing as a fairly successful state in the next few years, trading with the West and trading with the rest of the world.
And part of that movement of pulling Russia away from China is making nice with the Islamic Republic of Iran, if you can believe it. My next guest, the Moscow-based journalist and host of New Rules Geography, a very popular geopolitics podcast, said this recently on his Twitter page. He said, quote, "Message to Trump, don't think you can divide Russia and Iran. The two have just ratified a strategic partnership deal that can potentially reshape global trade, finance, and energy markets." And Dmitry joins us now from Moscow to discuss the latest on all of these movements, plus react to some of those statements, particularly on Iran, that Trump just made in the Oval Office. We're so glad you could be with us today, Dmitry. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on.
The topic of the tariff war with China particularly came up in that meeting with Giorgia Meloni. I suggested in my open to you that there is a rearranging, right, an economic rearranging, a trade rearranging based on this Trump tariff trade policy. So I'd love to get your stance, okay, as someone in Russia that covers the Kremlin, covers Moscow deeply. What did you think about what Greg Copley, another respected geopolitical analyst, had to say about the decoupling of Russia and China?
Well, that's not happening right now. Let's get from the very beginning, right? He talked about the United States pulling Russia away from China. At the moment, the United States is still sending weapons to Ukraine, providing intelligence to Ukraine. The United States is still providing political support to Ukraine. But even if we set Ukraine aside, Donald Trump earlier this week extended sanctions against Russia. So how can we talk about the United States pulling Russia away from China when the United States is not willing to do business with Russian companies, with Russia as a whole? Overall, I think that Russia is not going to be willing to accept any sort of arrangement where they have to give up ties with China. China is simply too important for us. It's our largest trading partner. It's our largest neighbor. And a lot of people in Russia are looking at the showdown that's happening right now, and they want to see how it plays out, because it's quite clear that we'll get an understanding who is the real global superpower. Is it the United States still, or has China already surpassed it? And I have to be honest with you, Emerald, a lot of people are inclined to think that China is going to prevail. So they're not in a rush to drop relations with China. That being said, I don't want to come off as a doomer on your program. So there is very strong interest in broadening Russia's relationship, because Russians don't want to put all of our eggs into a single basket. We don't want to be fully dependent on China, which is why we're developing relations with India, Malaysia, Vietnam, and other countries. And there's very strong interest from the Kremlin on the most senior levels to have an economic restart with the United States. Last month, actually, sorry.
Well, no, go ahead and finish your, then I'll interject, because I do think it's important what you're saying.
Not a lot of people covered it, but President Vladimir Putin earlier this month actually proposed a joint rare earth metal venture between the United States and Russia. He said that US and Russian companies can come together to help excavate and develop Russian rare earth metals. I want to remind your audience members, they probably don't know this, but Russia has the third largest supply of rare earth minerals in the world after China and Vietnam. It has many times more rare earth minerals than Ukraine does. And a lot of Ukraine's so-called rare earth minerals are now under Russia's control. Additionally, Russia has signaled that they're willing to do joint projects with Elon Musk in space. And earlier this week, there have been some unconfirmed reports that Russia has even offered to start buying Boeing airplanes again. So Russia is very much open to business with the United States.
Well, and that is what I'm hearing from you. And I think it would probably be smart on the part of Russia not to put their eggs all in China's basket, because, I mean, I was a little bit surprised. I didn't know how initially this tariff policy would go off with China. I talked to people in China, I talked to people in Europe, I talked to people here. And it's been very interesting over the last few weeks. The general consensus, Dimitri, has been that the United States does have a significant amount of leverage over China's, let's be honest, their economy, though you don't see a lot of coverage of this, has been struggling over the last few years, more so than maybe years past. And also Xi Jinping sounds like, to me, based on sources in China, he's kind of having to struggle to maintain his power now. And talking about this reset with the U.S., I know you sound very frustrated about the fact that Trump upped sanctions, also continuing to supply Ukraine. But it's been very interesting to see Envoy Witkoff and how he has responded to his meetings in Russia. In fact, let's take a listen to a clip from those meetings. Listen.
We might be on the verge of something that would be very, very important for the world at large. On top of that, I believe there's a possibility to reshape the Russian-United States relationship through some very compelling commercial opportunities that I think give real stability to the region, too.
He sounds hopeful.
Yeah. To be clear, I didn't want to make it sound as though I'm particularly frustrated. I'm just saying that, we have a long way to go before we can talk about some sort of grand U.S.-Russian alliance. Returning to Steve Witkoff, people in Moscow have been very impressed with him because even though he's not a professional diplomat, he gets Russia. And as I understand, he was one of the first foreign investors actually to come into Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union. So he's not a stranger to Russia. And he knows how to, talk to Russians. He's not an ideological fanatic like Antony Blinken, like Victoria Nuland, like some of the former people that Russia has gotten used to dealing over the past 25, 30 years. He's a businessman. And he thinks in terms of specific, economics, pluses and minuses. And on the Russian side, you have a lot of business-friendly technocrats, and most particularly Russian President Putin's special economic envoy, Kirill Dmitriev, and they seem to have a really good chemistry together.
Well, yeah, a lot of people didn't know that business background that you noted of Witkoff investing in Russia in the past. But also, I think that Witkoff has actually ruffled some feathers with his willingness to, or his seeming willingness to work with what is seen to be hostile powers. In fact, not only is it as it relates to Russia, but also Iran, Dimitri, because Witkoff, he's basically in hot water with the neocon foreign policy establishment here in the United States for saying this about allowing Iranians to keep highly enriched uranium to up to 3.7%. Let's take a quick listen to this and I'll get your reaction.
The conversation with the Iranians will be much about two critical points. One, enrichment. As you mentioned, they do not need to enrich past 3.67%. In some circumstances, they're at 60%. In other circumstances, 20%. That cannot be. And you do not need to run, as they claim, a civil nuclear program where you're enriching past 3.67%. So this is going to be much about verification on the enrichment program and then ultimately verification on weaponization.
Our resident geopolitical analyst, Brandon Weichert, broke news last weekend, Dimitri, that Witkoff and Trump are actually trying to get Russia to lead the effort to denuclearize Iran, specifically to take on Iran's highly enriched uranium, which is causing problems with Tehran. So is that a possibility? Could it be that Russia would be leading the effort to denuclearize Iran in conjunction with the U.S.? That seems like a pretty far step away also based on the other items you mentioned. We got 1.5 minutes for this.
Yeah, so I think Russia's uniquely positioned to help lead this negotiation process because Russia has incredibly close relations with Iran, not just politically, but also increasingly militarily and economically. And Russia helped support the initial GCPOA negotiations back in 2015. So they're very familiar with this issue. They have good rapport with the Iranian side. So theoretically, if we're able to get a resolution on Ukraine, that can help create cascading effects for Russia to play the role of middleman in U.S.-Iranian talks.
Dimitri Simes, thank you so much for joining us today to break this down more. Lots of meetings happening, even though it's a holiday weekend. Marco Rubio is headed to Paris, so Iran, Russia will definitely be big topics. Ukraine conversation there, so we'll have a lot more to talk about in the near future. Thank you so much, Dimitri.
Thank you. Take care.
Whether it's being a weekend warrior or spending time with your family, feeling your best is the key to doing the things you love. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Nirvanta. It's a natural solution designed to help you stay active and live well naturally. Nirvanta is a topical blend of all natural essential oils like frankincense, myrrh, and a proprietary gold standard plant stock extract. It's perfect for your hands, feet, knees, back, or anywhere else that needs a little extra care. Use Nirvanta proactively as part of your daily maintenance routine, and you're guaranteed you're going to feel the difference. Simply massage Nirvanta in for at least 60 seconds, 2 to 3 times a day to get the best results. And if you're not completely satisfied, you get your money back. No questions asked. There's simply no risk and no reason not to try Nirvanta today. Right now, you get 15% off with code Lindell exclusively at nirvantahealth.com. So stop reaching out for that medicine cabinet. Get Nirvanta instead and experience the difference. Go to nirvantahealth.com. Use code Lindell to get 15% off today. Nirvanta Health. Live well naturally.
The Vice President's office confirmed that Vice President J.D. Vance will head to Rome over the weekend, where he will meet with Cardinal Pietro Parolin, the Secretary of State for the Vatican, during his time in Rome for the Easter holiday. Vance, who became Catholic in 2019, is not confirmed yet to be meeting with the Pope, who has publicly made clear he's not happy about the Trump administration's cuts in foreign aid, particularly to Catholic charities. He's called it a catastrophic blow to their ability to, spend millions around the globe aiding in human trafficking. The Pope is also a globalist Marxist who is against the America First agenda overall. Joining us now is the author of the new book, An Almost Insurmountable Evil, How Obama's Deep State Defied the Catholic Church and Executed the Wuhan Pandemic. To tell us what to expect from this visit, Mr. Mike McCormick. He's also a former stenographer, Joe Biden's stenographer, and I mean like literally. I'm not talking symbolically or metaphorically, as I refer to many of the White House press corps. You actually worked as a stenographer at the White House, so it's good to see you, Mike.
Thanks, Emerald. Yeah, and I went to the Vatican with Joe Biden in 2016, and who was on that trip was Hunter Biden, kind of sleazy behind the scenes. So that was the start of the globalist movement that Pope Francis was I call him the morality launderer for the Obama-Biden White House. And that's what J.D. Vance is going over there to confront. And Cardinal Pietro Parolin is part of it. He was right in there side by side with Pope Francis and the Obama-Biden people. And that's what set up all this problem, this crisis that came up through the Darien Gap. We were just hearing Michael Yan and your other guests talk about that. This all started in the 2014 time era when Joe Biden set up this thing called the Alliance for Prosperity, and he did it with the help of the Vatican, and they ran through a guy named Theodore McCarrick, who was then a cardinal and a very evil man. And so
who just died, by the way.
He's dead. He died last week. Pretty interesting timing on that, right? Right before J.D. Vance goes to the Vatican, the witness about all this this Vatican skullduggery dies. So J.D. Vance is walking into a snake pit. The Vatican right now is anti-Trump, and J.D. Vance is the right guy to send to confront it.
What you seem to you tweeted on X that there will be some traps lying in wait for the VP in so many words. I mean, that's my extrapolation of what you said. What kind of traps? What do you think will be waiting for Vice President Vance?
Well, they're going to confront him about losing all that money for the Catholic Church, these NGOs. And I personally think that he's the guy to send. He's a Marine. He knows how to confront bad guys. So what he's got waiting for him is the globalists that have been infested into the Vatican for probably about 40 years or so. And part of the problem is the CIA is part of that infestation. Our CIA started working with the Vatican back in the post-World War II era. And I've seen some information that came out recently in the JFK files that had some pretty significant connections between the Vatican CIA, the Vatican Pope Vatican Pope Paul VI from the 60s and 70s was actually working with a CIA spy master named James Angleton when he was the Vatican Secretary of State in the late 40s and 50s. And one of the things they did was they started helping the Nazis escape Germany. And they did it through a small town in Switzerland called St. Gallen. And so there was a Nazi rat line system set up. And there was a witness to this named James Grine. James Grine was a victim of Cardinal Theodore McCarrick's sexual predations. And he's come out as a witness, and he actually filed the complaint that got Cardinal McCarrick investigated and defrocked. And so James Grine said his family was from St. Gallen, Switzerland, and that McCarrick used to visit them there. And at one point, he was working there with the Vatican to spread Nazi or people who were fleeing the war. He didn't really call them Nazis, but he said this in an interview just recently. People who are fleeing the war, to spread them around the world. That's what the CIA was interested in. They wanted to stop communism. They were interested in stopping Soviet agents. They didn't really care about the Nazis leaving. So this is the Vatican spreading Nazis around the world. And I think as these Argentinian files become public, we're going to find out some things about where the Nazis went and what they did.
Apparently to the beautiful Bariloche, which is like the Switzerland of Argentina. And we'll have to have you back when we get those files out to talk more about that. As you know, McCarrick, the back very cozy relationship with the Obama-Biden White House in which you worked, right? Biden has resurfaced this week, and it looks like Joe Biden, your old boss, is doing just about as well as out of office as he was in office. Listen.
Thank you. So good to be here. Shotgun shack to the who deserve help and paid for.
I didn't realize the music's playing. Mike, you also wrote the book. Your other book, which got a lot of attention, was Making the Case to Impeach Joe Biden. It's also available on Amazon as well. Pick up both of them. Joe, it's just funny that he even tried to get out there and do this again. I don't know. I don't really have anything profound to say about it. It was just bad.
Yeah, no, very strange. It's like they're panicking, and they're trying to push him out there to sort of, one more finger in the hole in the dike, and it's not working. And he's worse out there than he is hiding. But, the timing is all very strange. McCarrick goes away, Biden comes out. The Biden operation, the Obama-Biden operation that ran into the Vatican, it started in 2013. It ran through Dennis McDonough's office, White House Chief of Staff. And he's the guy that's the witness. When they get the investigation going and they get Dennis McDonough under oath and having to testify, that's when we learn about what happened with Catholic charities and the Vatican infiltration by the CIA and McCarrick. And that's when we learn about the origination of the Wuhan pandemic, because he was involved in both of those things.
I think there's a lot of concern in Washington, D.C. and amongst the establishment elites of what exactly the Trump administration is going to investigate. And I have been told that, particularly at the Department of Defense, they're going to be looking into some previous action taken by administrations in the Pentagon that, the American public has long questioned. And I think that's incited some fear in some people. That brings me to an interview that's getting a ton of attention right now. And I don't have a clip from the interview, but this is with former Congressman Weldon of Pennsylvania and Tucker Carlson. You might ask how this relates, and I'm springing this on you, so I'll just let my audience know that. But somebody said Mike McCormick would know. From this interview is a discussion, a discussion about Osama bin Laden actually having been hidden in Iran. Someone, MJ Truth, the X account, posted this call from 2011 between Weldon, a operative who was a falconer, that's a bird trainer to the like Saudi elite, the Middle Eastern elite, and a Joe Biden attorney fixer, about bin Laden. Take a listen.
And recently, between November 2004 and up until recently, my team members have met Osama bin Laden 6 times inside Iran. We have repeatedly notified the U.S. government and only received, first we were ignored, then we were obstructed, and then we were threatened.
On my most recent trip to Kuwait, I was with my 2 closest friends there, Sheikh Mohammed, who's the foreign minister, deputy prime minister, and former U.S. ambassador, and Sheikh Saud, who was the ambassador during Desert Storm.
Yes.
And who was George Bush, the father's closest friend in the Middle East.
Yes.
And he's a very close friend of mine, and we were having a private dinner with his son Noah, who's another really close friend of mine. And we got to talking about bin Laden, and I said, Sheikh Saud, where do you think he is? He said, oh, Kurt. He said, there's no doubt, he's in Iran. Yeah, I just told Kurt, I said, no, the better way of doing it, if Susan Collins and Lieberman are on board, I wouldn't go see Obama, I'd go see Biden. And Brian can arrange that. Brian can arrange that directly.
If you are willing, what do you know about this?
So I have a little bit of information on this that's kind of unusual. First of all, I don't believe Kurt Weldon. I think he's a cover story. The information I have was I took a trip in 2005 with Vice President Dick Cheney to Pakistan. It was the 3rd stop. We went to Iraq, and we went to Afghanistan, and then we went to Pakistan. When we flew a helicopter in Pakistan, there was USAID was doing a bunch of earthquake relief up in the hills. We flew a helicopter right over Abbottabad, which is where they had Osama bin Laden killed 5.5 years later in 2011. It was in May 2011. And at the time, we didn't know why was Dick Cheney flying a helicopter over Abbottabad. There was no real good reason for it. And so I've looked into CIA legacy websites and found surveillance photos that they had. They were surveilling the exact site of the Osama bin Laden compound in 2004 and 2005. And I think this overflight by Cheney was basically him going to the region and conducting sort of a manager's overview of the fact that they had Osama bin Laden set aside in a safe house, maybe a CIA-operated safe house that he thought was a location where he was safe, but he was actually on ice. And one of the people on the trip was Dana Bash from CNN. Dana Bash interviewed Vice President Cheney, and the transcript that I produced of it, she asked him, there's information that Osama bin Laden is in Pakistan. And he said, Dana, I can't answer that question. He didn't say yes, he didn't say no. It was I can neither confirm nor deny answer. At the time, her husband, Jeremy Bash, was a senior intelligence operative. He actually was the chief of staff of the CIA in 2011 when Osama bin Laden was killed. I've since checked in with Robert O'Neill, who was the Navy SEAL who killed bin Laden. I ran into him at CPAC, and I said, Robert, I have his information. And I said, you should have me on your podcast to talk about it. He doesn't want to talk to me about it. He's acknowledged it. I've emailed him the photos I have of it, and he's acknowledged it's significant, but he doesn't want to talk to me about it. So there's something there about where Osama bin Laden was. Some people think it was Iran. I personally think he was in Pakistan, but definitely Joe Biden knew about it the entire time. I think that's part of the reason why they made him vice president. And I think what happened was Musharraf was the chief of Pakistan in 2007. He got bumped out in 2008. And that's when the new guy took over. And that's who Obama and Biden were working with, that new guy. He was a CIA installed head of Pakistan. So this is sort of the handoff. And Cheney, and so this is basically the U.S. government sent our troops around the world into harm's way while they had Osama bin Laden on ice the entire time. And this has to be investigated. And I really appreciate you letting me talk about it on your show.
Yeah, I think it's getting more attention. I think that's also why the powers that be, powers that were, are getting very nervous and making some curious moves, some of which we can disclose and some of which will probably be for another time. Mike McCormick, we hope you'll join us again soon to do a deeper dive into all of this. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Emerald. Great to be on with you.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the next generation of energy drinks, Rev 7. It has no sugar and no caffeine. Instead, Rev 7 uses Go BHB. Go BHB is one of the body's primary ketones, and it provides the most efficient and clean fuel that your body needs. It also helps you stay energized all day with no crashes. Not only that, it produces 3 times more brain energy than sugar, which helps boost your memory, focus, and mental sharpness. It also helps reduce stress and helps balance your mood. Rev 7 does all that while being the best tasting energy drink ever. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% today. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7. For a limited time, you get our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. I drink Rev 7 every day and I absolutely love it, and so will you.
This is an unsustainable and unjust moment, so it cannot continue this way. I also told his wife and family that I would try to meet with Mr. Abrego Garcia while I was here. So I asked the vice president if I could meet with Mr. Abrego Garcia. And he said, well, you need to make earlier provisions to go visit CCOT.
That was Maryland Democrat Senator Chris Van Hollen standing in El Salvador yesterday, demanding the release and return of the illegal immigrant and MS-13 gang member from El Salvador, who has become the patron saint of the Democrat Party, replacing one George Floyd. Now, to be clear, Senator Van Hollen is siding with an illegal alien. He has no regard for any of his constituents and their families who might have been affected, victimized by illegals in his state. To remind people of what the Moran family, in particular Maryland, has been through at the hands of an illegal, the Trump administration invited the mother of a deceased woman to the White House press room to urge the craven corporate press corps, especially Caitlin Collins of CNN, to do the right thing and just simply report the truth about her daughter's MS-13 murderer.
And I just want to say that as a mother and as an American citizen, the president and our entire team, and I hope people in this room are grateful for your willingness to come here and your request to share your daughter's story. And I think the country hears you loud and clear, so thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Patty or for me? No?
I have a question.
No? Anybody? Okay. We'll see you all later. The president will be at his dinner later this evening.
Thank you for being here, Ms. Warren. We really appreciate it.
That doesn't affect you. You don't have a heart. All this is occurring as the New York Post reports that the Darien Gap, an area in Central America that millions of illegals used on their way to the U.S., has seen a stunning 99% decrease in illegal immigration since Trump took office. Is that for sure the case? Let's ask people who know. I'm joined now by independent war correspondent Michael Yan and independent journalist Masako Ganaha. I mean, you guys are almost permanently perched down there in the Darien Gap in the Panama Canal Zone. I just noted that the New York Post is reporting that movement through there is down significantly, like 99%. You are literally down there right now. Is that what you're seeing? A significant drop in immigrants coming across through there?
Yes, we interviewed yesterday here in this exact same room with the chief of the Senafront. That's the Panamanian Border Service. It's like a border patrol military.
Oh, yeah.
And
is it Senafort?
Senafront.
Senafront.
He mentioned 95% of this illegal crossing has dropped down. 95%.
But at this point, I would say 99. I think that because Masako has been to the Darien Gap quite a lot, and she's becoming like half Indian at this point. She loves it down there. But now Commander Ortega, or his former commander of Senafront, he said it was down 95%, but it is like 99. However, and this is very important, the architecture is still in place for the NGOs. HIAS is still in their offices. The Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, Norwegian Refugee Councils, Doctors Without Morals, all those guys are all still there. IOM is still actively operating. IOM, Amy Pope, she's the chief of IOM. We follow her Twitter every day. She's off in Haiti right now, rounding up more people to send through. This is far from over. And I keep telling Team Trump, if you don't defund the United Nations and start really taking them down hard, everything else is just show. This is all just show, because we've seen the Darien Gap close before. It's closed before and then comes back with a vengeance each time. And if they don't take out the plumbing, which means the NGOs like United Nations and Doctors Without Morals and Red Cross and all those guys, it's just going to continue. Keep in mind, they're also going across the Canadian border through the Bahamas, student visas. Yeah. There's no mass deportations going on. It's just not happening. They keep saying we're getting ready to. Hey, or they don't have the resources for it, but they have the resources to go ahead and attack Iran. But they can't figure out how to get ships up the Mississippi River. I can help them out. There's a port in Memphis where they take tours. You drive ships up to Memphis and all these other places, and you rent those Carnival cruise lines and whatnot, and you load them up. And you take them down to the countries where they came from, like Venezuela. If Venezuela refuses to take their people back, we send the Marines and we open the beach and we send them back. It's that simple, right? Man rules. And they're not doing it. It's just not happening.
Well, so what I'm hearing from you is that someone can come on and flip the lights back on. And that's a problem. If it's there, It can start back up like that. And I had this conversation with a former USAID official. I want to be careful about what I said, but sources from within the State Department tell me that is a major concern for the actual America Firsters who are there, of which there's not enough, right? And there is, as I noted at the top of the show, there's a battle going on there. But what I am hearing, Masako and Michael, speaking of this kind of funding you're talking about, Michael, is that there is a battle over that internally, because some of the people who are running it for Marco Rubio are afraid of bad press. And so now they're even starting to talk about some of the foreign assistance they stopped, some of these bad NGO assistance that they stopped. They're thinking about starting to restart those funds going back to these groups. That's a problem. And I think that's why you're seeing the infrastructure still there, right? HIAS and all these NGO players are still around, ready and waiting for it to restart, it sounds like, right?
Absolutely. And as you know, Laura Logan was just down there with us, and she's as serious as it gets. And so, after she's on the airplane right now back to Texas, when she gets rested up, you've got to have her on and hear her side of it. But when it comes to Marco Rubio, I've heard he has a lot of wimps around him, and he's kind of wimpy himself because he wants to have fun and keep going to USAID. Marco Rubio, you're on notice. You will get attacked, right? I mean, this is the bottom line. If you're not going to man up and go for USAID and take on the NGOs, you're just not a serious man. You're just talking yappity, yappity, yappy, nice suits, nice shoes, but you're not a serious man. You got perfect hair. I'm very suspicious of that because you're spending too much time on your hair and not enough time closing these people down.
Well, they still have all these Biden era people in place. In fact, it's like a 30-year career woman who is, running a lot of State Department, who pulled back a Biden ambassador from Africa to do the reorganization at the State Department. So that's a problem. You're not going to get any change, specifically defunding the UN, such like that, if you have those kind of issues going on. I do want to get to another issue, Masako, specifically for you. This is Taiwan. There's some news developing there. I'm not seeing much coverage of it, so I want to see if this is on your radar. After 6 years of waiting for them, Lockheed Martin finally delivered 66 F-16 Block 70s to Taiwan. Doesn't seem to be sitting really well with China. Do you think this is going to escalate the situation there and China will imminently invade, relatively soon? Your thoughts, Masako?
Well, we have been doing a lot of interviews. He focused on here. So I just saw the headline of this news just this morning.
Yeah.
So I cannot go into details. But as soon as I saw the headline and the pictures of the conflict within Taiwan, I'm sure that this is connected to what we see in Panama, because what we are dealing here, the illegal invasion to the United States, it's not just about the border issue, of course, it's invasion, it's the global picture on the whole globe. So here in Panama, US and China is doing proxy war, and Panama is in between, and it's brewing up. So China's move is to do something on Taiwan, right? So it's not it's really connected. So we need to, I need to be able to, I need to go in deeper in order to talk specifically about this. But what I can say is that there are huge, China is, even though they do not launch missile or the bullet, physical bullet, they are already invading Taiwan. For example, there is an island very close to mainland China. It's called Kinmen Island. It's Taiwan. But the closest shore is only 1.8 kilometer when the tide is low. And there in Kinmen Island, people used to be banned having like a soccer ball or basketball, because if you have two balls in your armpit, you can swim across the ocean. So
wow,
it's that intense. And when we talk to the local people in Kinmen Island, they say that as long as CCP do not physically harm them, they are ready to turn back. And
wow,
they're on CCP side, so they are pro CCP. So China
without launching a missile or shooting a bullet,
they become you without firing bullets, and that's already happening.
Yeah. I wanted to bring it up because, as you said, it's all related. It's not just isolated to Panama. It's not just Taiwan. It's the global push of China. And we'll have more to talk on that next week. Thank you so much for taking the time with us. You all have been so busy, and I know you've been up all night because you were out there taking Lara Logan around. And I'll tell our audience they can follow you both on X, see the amazing videos. Michael Yan, you have a great Substack. And we'll try to get Lara on soon to talk about her experience down in the Darien Gap as well. Thank you for what you continue to do, because there's just nobody else doing this. And no one would really be thinking about it as it relates to the State Department and what they are not doing if it wasn't for your all's amazing work. So thank you.
Wait until Laura Logan gets some sleep and get her on. I can't wait to see the show. Yeah, it's going to be important.
Me either.
Yes,
she's so great. Anyway, this is her and her element.
Yes,
Yep.
I want to be exactly correct. I said we interview, but Lara Logan interviewed the former chief of Senate.
Sure.
And a lot of the interview will come up. So I'm excited to see her going rogue on the road.
Me too. She's so good at that. And I caught a snippet of it on X. It'll be great. Thank you all.
Bye, Emerald.
And just to remind you, we will be off tomorrow in observance of Good Friday. And ahead of the Easter celebration on Sunday, we wish you a happy Easter. I'll also remind you, in the meantime, be sure to go to mypillow.com. Help support us. We appreciate everything you do. We're so thankful for you and our audience, and the employees at MyPillow. I know Mike tells me all the time are so appreciative of you and the Truth audience. Go to mypillow.com, use the promo code TRUTH, and we will see you on Monday. That's the absolute truth. We'll see you soon.